I want to welcome everyone to the June 2022 ELPCO Community meeting, our last meeting before we go on our summer break. We'll just wait a couple minutes to let folks arrive on Zoom and in person. Again, the peculiarities of a hybrid meeting. I feel like I'm talking to two audiences, but we'll do the best we can. We'll get going. We got a great meeting with updates on the inland port from D to C, and what's going on with Salt Lake City's affordable housing incentives with Judy Short, who's been studying this issue quite a bit. We'll, of course, kick things off with Salt Lake City Fire, who are here in the room, and Salt Lake City Police. And we'll get started in just a couple minutes. And I just wanted to say we're also starting with a little bit more of a security format for this meeting on Zoom, just because we've had some people who just think it's still 2020 and want to do Zoom bombing. I guess we're that popular. We're actually, I guess, should be happy. So we're going to keep things a little locked up at first and then kind of loosen things once they lose interest and go back to their basement to play video games. So, but again, I'm Jason Stevenson from ELPCO, and we'll get started in a minute or two. Okay, we've got a good almost. Good. All right, I feel like I've been up here before. I'm Jason Stevenson, co-chair of the East Liberty Park Community Organization. Welcome to our June 2022 meeting. This is our last meeting before we go on a summer break, and we'll be back in September for a couple meetings before the end of the year. ELPCO is the neighborhood community council for the area around Liberty Park and East High School and 9th and 9th. Been around for 30 some years, and we do monthly meetings where we talk about issues of local interest. And we've got a couple of those on the agenda today: the Utah Inland Port and the affordable housing overlay, or incentives that Salt Lake City is considering at the moment. But we always start by recognizing folks in the audience. I want to recognize Salt Lake City Fire Department from station number 5 who are here, and we asked them to come up and give their presentation, because it could be like last month where they get a call right in the middle of it and got to run out. So we'll get them up here. Thank you. If you don't mind standing right about here on this blue X. Yeah. I promise no slime will come down from the ceiling.
Try to hit my marks here. Good evening. My name is Matt Wilson, and I'm happy to be a part of Station 5 for the last several years. And I happen to live in this neighborhood as well. So this meeting is something I've attended as a resident, and now I get to be a part of it as a fire department representative, which I can appreciate. We'll get on to the fire safety talks as the summer is heating up, and we've got all the fireworks events coming up in the month of July. But I wanted to hit part of the chief's newsletter for June. We're still in that last day of June, and emphasize the Pet Preparedness Month. Is one of the many things that June is, and make sure that you guys out there have a plan for your pets in case of an emergency. If there's a fire in your home or an earthquake, those kinds of things. Make sure you have an evacuation plan for your pet, that you are working with your neighbors to develop a buddy system so that you guys can all be accountable for everyone's little furry loved ones. And remember, you can always get your pet microchipped to help track them. I know a lot of times dogs will run off on a loud 4th of July night and go hide somewhere that it's hard to track them down. So that's really helpful. So moving on to the fireworks events, the 4th and the 24th coming up here. The fire department really wants to encourage everyone to be fire safe. And we have a program called Ready, Set, Go that has a real emphasis in the foothills where you have the wildland urban interface. That program can be found on our website, saltlakecityfire.com. There are more details about how to create defensible space around your home, and support the firefighters in their efforts to respond to emergencies in your neighborhood. Keep in mind, if you have a fire hydrant in your area, near your home, on your street, everyone needs to keep an eye out to make sure that those things don't get overgrown. Making sure that, landscaping, rocks, etc. We want to at least 3 feet in all directions around each fire department or fire hydrant, please. All right. So just a couple things about the fireworks restrictions this summer. We do have, unlike last summer where it was an outright ban, we do have some areas in the city where you are permitted to light off fireworks, though Salt Lake City Fire Department recommends that you forego any of your personal fireworks and attend the permitted professional displays that will be happening on the 4th and the 24th. There's some light shows and those kinds of things. But inside the city limits, so east of Redwood Road, so the permitted areas inside the city limits are east of Redwood and west of 900 East. And then anything south of South Temple, those areas inside the city, excluding any parks or golf courses. Okay, anything up above those areas or further out west than Redwood, we ask that you do not set off any fireworks. The other thing to note in backyard recreating, if you have a cooking fire or a backyard fire for hanging out in the evenings, they need to be contained in particularly safe, in a grill or in a fire pan that has these spark arrestor devices, basically screens that keep those sparks from flying away and causing problems. So open fires, just right on the ground, that is not permitted. Make sure that you have a hose ready, a 5-gallon bucket, that kind of thing, some way to extinguish something that gets out of hand. Any questions? Okay, that's all I have tonight. Thanks for having us.
All right, thank you. Nice to know, Matt, that you're a resident of ELPCO. I actually recognize you now from when you used to come to our meetings years past. So it's great to see you. We will likely have some of the signs that Salt Lake City Fire has put together. Jeff Larson, one of our board members, should be bringing them to the meeting tonight. We'll also have them available to pick up. These are just signs that you can post in your yard that give people that same information about what the fireworks zones are, what's permitted and what's not. Some of you might remember when Sugar House Park caught fire a couple of years back. You can see that burn mark for a couple of weeks going on. So something we don't want to burn our city down celebrating in July. So let's keep things safe. We'll now turn it over to Detective Fallows from Salt Lake City Police, who's virtual. Detective Fallows, I think you're a co-host. You can probably turn your camera on now.
Yep, I'm here. Can you all hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Perfect. Just before we get started, I'm going to ask everybody, if you have any questions online, please put them in the chat so that I can, while I'm talking, that way I can get to them as soon as I'm done with my presentation. And then I've put some links in the chat like I generally do for those online and anybody there that might be able to see that. So let's go ahead and, you want to put up the PDF there, Jason?
Yep, I'll do that. Can you see that, Detective Fallows? Is it there yet?
Yeah, it just looks like a...
How's that? I'm getting a lot of funny things popping up. How does that look?
It's like showing your screen, but not the presentation screen, basically.
Got it. Let me see if I can work this. Let me do it this way. Just keep on adding new things. How's that? Is that a little better?
Yes, perfect. Yeah, that's fine.
Would you want me to start on this screen or go somewhere else?
Yeah, we can start on this one. Or yeah, that's fine. So this will be our top 5 calls for the month of May. We had the first one was, well, these are the top calls for the month of May, excuse me. The first one was mental health related type calls. We had 9 of those compared to 3 for last year. So that definitely went up quite a bit. One thing I do want to mention on that, something that I'm very proud of in the Salt Lake City Police Department is we have worked, especially over the last about year and a half now, to put together a really strong civilian team that are social workers that we are able to call out on patrol to assist us with these types of calls. And so up to now, I believe we've got like 8 to 10 social workers that are full-time and they work 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. We're able to call them out on any kind of mental health related call, and they can come and take over and get all the services that individual needs. And we can kind of just be in the background and be less overbearing to that individual who's in crisis. And so although those numbers are going up, I'm grateful that in Salt Lake City, we have a police department that puts that as a top priority and has gone, and a city as well that has made that a top priority and gone above and beyond to help individuals that are in crisis. So the second highest for the month of June was motor vehicle prowls or vehicle burglaries. It's something we see often in ELPCO. And so there were 8 compared to 11 last year. So it is good that it's trending down from last year. That's a good thing. Let's go to the next slide, Jason, then we can kind of see the different side-by-side comparisons. So sorry, give me just a second. So we can see that the motor vehicles are at 8 for the month. And essentially, a lot of these are occurring because, number one, it's getting warmer, so there's going to be more people out and about. A lot of these are essentially the motor vehicles are at 8 per month. And essentially, a lot of these are occurring because, number one, it's getting warmer, so there's going to be more people out and about. And then, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can. Sorry, it's a little bit crowded on my screen, but I'm trying to get a little better.
It's fine. Okay, I just want to make sure because so yeah, there's more people out and about. A lot of this is just essentially a crime of opportunity where they're walking by, checking door handles, looking for vehicles that are, of course, they do smash to windows sometimes. That does happen as well. Best thing for us to do is just try and take all of our valuables out of the vehicles. If we can, park our vehicles inside in a garage. If not, if we don't have that option, then try and light up our driveways as best we can to kind of help mitigate those issues. And then our third highest call was the credit card fraud, which goes hand in hand generally with motor vehicle prowls. And so, again, that just comes down to trying to make sure we take out our purses, our wallets, things like that. Make sure they're not leaving anything of value in our vehicles. At number four, we had non-reportable traffic accidents. Again, that's trending down, so that's good. There were only 5 of those, and then the fifth top call was the damaged private property. There were 4 of those, so that went up from last year. And that could be anything from, like, somebody's fence getting damaged from a vehicle or something like that to just anybody just damaging property in general that's private. So the other numbers look like they are kind of trending down. Some of them, that's good, like the burglary, which is good. That's trending down. The shoplift is trending down. So it's good to see these numbers go down. Most of the numbers in the city are going up. So that's a positive for ELPCO for sure. I think that's good for the presentation. Does anybody have any questions on those or on anything else?
Any questions for Detective Fallows? Let me check the chat.
I'm looking in the chat. I don't see any questions in there.
Okay. Gotcha. I'm getting advice on how to use PowerPoint. I appreciate that, Lynn. You think I would know. I tried the full screen icon before and it didn't work. So that's why I switched to this as like a backup. So
yeah, no, that's fine. That's great.
Okay. One other thing I wanted to mention was that traffic accidents, which used to be spiking in ELPCO, are now kind of reaching a little bit more of a normal average. So that's, as you mentioned, Detective, that's something good. It's amazing how much traffic accidents take up police time and really always are on our top 10, 15 incidents each month. So it's good to see that those are going down because they have been spiking in recent months.
Absolutely. And on that, I do know that our motor unit has gone back to doing more of what they do, which is kind of traffic enforcement. And so that is probably also something that's been positive to help that trend down a little bit, is they've been able to go out and do more traffic enforcement to help those numbers come down. So if anybody ends up having a question, I apologize. I have another meeting I have to get to, but my information is in the chat. You can always send me an email or call my desk phone and leave me a message, and I'll be happy to I get back to you pretty quick. I'm pretty good about getting back to people. So if you need anything at all, don't hesitate to reach out. And yeah, just you guys are doing good here in ELPCO. So the numbers are trending down, which most of the city it's not happening. So that's good.
Okay. Great. Well, thank you, Detective Fallows. Appreciate that. I actually put the link to the crime report in the chat as well. So if you didn't get to see that PDF as clearly as you could, I apologize. Sometimes I feel like PowerPoint is a foreign language that I'm still learning to speak. But you'll be able to download that as a PDF and check out all 4 slides, including some of the takeaways. You can collect them each month and have your own ELPCO crime report portfolio. We're now going to shift over to Dita Seed, who is going to be telling us a little about the Utah Inland Port, which was in the news quite a bit this week. It's not like we planned it, but the Utah Supreme Court decided to issue a ruling that you'll talk about. Dita Seed is with the Stop the Polluting Port organization, as well as several others. And I just saw, Dita, that you were also a Salt Lake City Council member going back a couple of years. So that's exciting. Welcome you here. Let me go get you ready online.
Okay, thank you. And I have a few slides to share. Yes, I was a council member 27 years ago. So quite a while. So the Utah Inland Port has been in the news, and probably many of you saw that finally the Utah Supreme Court issued its decision on the city's litigation. So I want to just give you a brief update on where we stand with that. And then also there are several other things that are happening. Can I share my screen now, or am I waiting for you still?
You should be able to.
Okay, yes, I see it. Here we go. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do, but hold on. We'll go to presenter view. Okay, so can everybody see, can you see it? Can you see the slide?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. So what you, oops, I have to be very careful. It's sensitive. So what you're looking at right here is the bottom of the screen is an inland port. The top is what the landscape that's at issue looks like now when it's not built on. Okay, so where we are, and this, I put in a few beauty shots just to remind us that we do live in an amazing place that's worth protecting. So, okay, here we get to the nitty gritty. Okay, so this is a map of the Utah Inland Port jurisdictional area and delineated, and I can make this map available to you all if you're interested in looking at it more closely. But essentially where my cursor is running is I-80. And this land over here is the biggest undeveloped chunk. And here's the state prison. The number 1 is the prison. This is the new blue in here. Those are wetlands. Anything that has blue is an actual wetland. And then a lot of this is uplands and playa. And so over here, right, number 7 it is where there's a plan to build, the Utah Inland Port Authority wants to build a new transloading facility. And then on the other side of it is, it's actually not showing up on this map as number 6, but so actually the transloading facility that they want to build would be here, and the existing intermodal facility is right here. We'll come back to this map if we need to, but this gives you a general sense of the lay of the land, so to speak. So what's happening, oops, my thing's not cooperating. Okay, so let's talk about, I'm going to stop sharing for a second. Let's talk about what just happened. Filed, or her city attorney filed litigation calling that the creation of the Utah Inland Port Authority violated the Utah state constitution under something called the Ripper Clause. And the Ripper Clause is just as it sounds, it's ripping something away. And so what was ripped away, in our view and in the city's view, was the city's rightful land use authority, the authority to make zoning decisions and other land use decisions, and then also the city's authority to make decisions about how property tax revenue is spent. And so that case has been winding its way through the court system. The lower court ruled against the city in favor of the Port Authority in the state. And then just yesterday,
sorry about this.
Yesterday, the Utah Supreme Court ruled against the city with regard to the land use issues, and then left the question about taxation open a little bit. So that's where we are right now. And the city has until August 12th to file a supplemental brief making arguments about why the issue isn't moot. So the other thing the Supreme Court said was, well, we think because of legislation that was just passed this year that creates a situation where the city is going to enter into a contract with the Port Authority over how tax revenue gets spent, that this issue of unfair usurpation of revenue and spending authority is moot. So that's where we are with the litigation. Do you have any questions? I know that was kind of wonky, and I'm not an attorney. Is anybody there? Hello?
Folks can ask questions in the chat.
In the chat, okay. Lynn has her hand up.
Got it. Go ahead, Lynn. You can ask it in the chat, or you can actually unmute if you'd like to. Pretty sure you can in the chat.
Okay. Hi, Dita. I'm a PhD toxicologist, and frankly, I'm very concerned about this loading and transferring issue in the inland port because of Utah coal. And as a toxicologist, I know how many toxic chemicals are in our coal, and that the natural jet stream runs across that area into Salt Lake. And I'm very concerned about open air transfer of, and I read this in the paper the other day, of organic materials that are part of the trade commodities from Utah. This is very dangerous. All coal must be contained and transferred in contained compartments, never allowed to be transferred open.
Yeah.
This is a very critical issue. Arsenic, mercury. I can't tell you how many toxic chemicals are in coal. And if that becomes part of a dust in a wind formation from the jet stream, Salt Lake is going to see huge increases in cancers, all kinds of cancers. It's not good. So I've always supported your work in this area, but please make that an important issue that all transfers must be in contained containers. Thank you.
Thanks, Lynn. Well, so might be a little good news with regard to coal. Initially, when the legislation creating the Utah Inland Port Authority was passed in 2018 in the wee hours, like 9:30 at night with virtually no debate, then Speaker Greg Hughes was really talking about this being a place where coal was exported. It turns out that coal, fortunately, is not very economically viable. And so there isn't an expansion in the coal export market at all right now. And also coal is mined in central Utah and it's shipped out from central Utah. They wouldn't bring it up here. There is some coal from Wyoming that comes through our area, but it does not stop. There are, though, other huge, enormous environmental concerns associated with what's being planned at the Utah Inland Port. And the biggest thing probably is that it's just going to be, if they get their way, a lot of warehouse construction. 152 million acres of new warehouse space is what they could build if they got their way. And that will entail a dramatic increase in diesel truck traffic. And that's just for starters, you know, the long list of environmental harms. I mean, building the warehouses has huge climate emissions impact. We're destroying wildlife habitat. There are environmental justice issues associated with development of the inland port because it's right, you know, next to neighborhoods, and some of our most diverse and economically challenged communities are along the boundary of the Utah Inland Port. So there are a huge list of concerns. Where we are in this fight right now, and I think this is important for everyone to know, is that the Port Authority is poised to or they are negotiating a contract with Salt Lake City to define how the tax revenue that's generated, the tax differential, gets spent. And so this is where we all can really weigh in with our city council members and with the mayor in urging that certain things happen. And so one thing, to get to Lynn's point, is that there needs to be a very thorough human health risk assessment conducted with regard to what this build out, like if 152 million square feet of new warehouse space is built in this area, what are the human health consequences of that in terms of air pollution impacts, diminishment of water quality and quantity, the environmental justice impacts, traffic congestion. I mean, the whole laundry list needs to be looked at, and it should have been looked at a long time ago, but because of the politics of this, and it's being driven by development interests, you know, and people like Greg Hughes were pushing back against any analysis, it hasn't happened, but now it can. It may be a little bit too late, but late is better than never. So that's one thing that we're pushing for. We're also pushing for an environmental justice analysis to look at the specific harms that will happen to the communities that are closest to the port area. And then we're also looking for money and a program to ensure that these warehouses are built to the most environmentally sustainable standards, and not right now what they're building out there is just your run-of-the-mill polluting warehouse. But you know, and before they started building, the developers were, you know, talking about, oh, it's going to be sustainable development, blah 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 blah. None of that has happened. There are no solar panels on any roofs like they promised us there would be. We're not sure if these are bird-friendly buildings where, you know, there's downward lighting, and like there are a whole bunch of checklist things that should be happening, and most of them aren't. And we need to make that change. And then the other thing is protection of the natural area that is beyond the inland port jurisdictional area. There need to be conservation easements on that land, and a buffer, a 400-foot buffer between development and the natural area. And so we're working really hard to get those things included in the contract that the city and the Port Authority negotiate. And if we're successful and these things are explicitly stipulated that's a victory for the community for sure. If it ends up being some kind of vague, wishy-washy document, yeah, it's not going to be good. And then just one more thing also that you need to know about is that there's a legislative audit being conducted with regard to how the money is being spent. So the Port Authority now has a budget that I've got it right here. This is really pathetic. This is the budget they give you. It's 4 pages, and that's unacceptable. Unacceptably lacking in detail that the tax-paying public should have access to. But their budget is now $32 million for the coming fiscal year, starting July 1st. And that's a lot of money. And we don't really know how they're spending it in any way. I mean, it's incredibly vague, this budget document. So the legislative auditors are going to dive into the details and hopefully this fall release the first part of a 2-part audit that tax-paying public better information about how this money is being spent. Cindy, do you have a question?
Oh, yeah. Oh, thanks. I want to be sure everybody realizes that Victoria Petro Eschler has assumed the representation for Salt Lake City on the commission, and she replaces James Rogers. She's formerly a member of the Historic Landmarks Commission and was elected last fall to serve on the city council. So she is the person, and she has told me she's spending a great deal of time on the inland port.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you, Dita, what you see as the next step. Will the city file some kind of amendment about the or do you see the deadline just passing? What do you see happening next?
To the litigation, the city and the state have until August 12th to provide the Supreme Court a supplemental briefing material. So basically to make the case with regard to the tax revenue issue. And so what we're hoping is that the city attorney will put forth a strong argument for why this is still relevant and is, that what the Port Authority is doing is a usurpation of the city's rightful authority, notwithstanding this contract. It may be that the contract ends up being really good, but we don't know that right now. And the odds are it won't be, I'm sad to say, just based on the past 4 years. For the taxpayers, for the direct access and control to over our tax revenue. Because right now, yes, Council Member Victoria Petro Eschler is a non-voting member of the Utah Inland Port Authority Board. She does not have a vote. She is influential just because she's spending time and she's thoughtful, but she doesn't have a vote. And when push comes to shove, it's not clear that they would listen to her. We don't know. And at any rate, that's not the strongest position to be in when millions of your tax dollars are being spent, is to have a body that doesn't represent your taxpayers making decisions about how the money gets spent. So we hope the city files a good, strong set of briefing arguments in support of the original position, which is that this is legal usurpation of Salt Lake City's rightful taxing authority. So that needs to happen first. And then while that's happening, these contract negotiations are going to be going on, and there needs to be a contract in place by the end of the year. Mike? I can't hear you, Mike. Unmute.
Okay. Hey, I have a few questions. I mean, pardon my ignorance. I don't know a lot about inland ports. It's probably the first one I ever heard of. So what is it? It's shipping on trucks. It's shipping on trains, to trucks. It's got airplanes. What? All of the above?
Yes, yes. It's actually it's a little bit of an ambiguous term, but everything that you've just described are, those could be all elements of an inland port. And so in our case, even though the airport doesn't have a really strong role at this point, they name the airport and the Union Pacific's intermodal facility and the highways, I-15 and 215 and I-80, and the main line of the Union Pacific Railroad. So all of those things coming together, I mean, basically it's a goods transfer facility of some sort. Generally speaking, inland ports are about trucks and warehouses primarily. And then the rail is an add-on. And so in our case, originally the plan was that, and I don't know who vetted this idea because it fell flat really quickly, but the vision of the developers was that they would entice the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railway, which is a competitor to Union Pacific, to build a giant intermodal facility on the north side of I-80. And then there'd be 2 intermodal facilities. And they liked that. The developers liked that because they said it would create competition and the cost of shipping would go down. And then warehouse developers would want to develop the warehouses around the area. But it turned out that the Burlington Northern Santa Fe had no interest in spending $240 million to build an intermodal facility next to the Union Pacific facility. And if you talk to Union Pacific, which I have, they have plans to expand, but there just aren't enough exports going out to justify even their expansion at this point.
So are they going to give us money for the roads that they're going to be using gratuitously?
So you just named the issue. That's part of the problem. Like if you talk to the mayor, she'll like, we're paying for a lot of the infrastructure that's going in. It's being paid for with a little bit of it is general revenue from the legislature, general appropriations money that all taxpayers put in. But then another chunk of it is what's called tax differential, which is property tax revenue that's coming in above the base. And the base, before development started happening in this area, the base was very, very low. And so that tax differential is coming to the Port Authority and they're choosing how to spend it. And the argument is that the city then has to pull money from other places to pay for public safety, road maintenance, snow removal, all of those things, because the city's authority has been taken away by the Port Authority. And so this is what caused the litigation in the first place. And over the 4 years that we've been in this, the city has clawed back pieces of this, but is not all the way where it needs to be in any way. And this contract negotiation will tell the story. But our argument, as I'm a city resident, is it's really unfair. We're subsidizing this development and getting nothing for it and paying for it.
And that's what leads me to this other question is, when did this get passed? I mean, like I've only been in state for a little over 3 years, so I don't know if there was a vote that I wasn't part of.
Yeah.
This was a unit, they just did it on their own unilaterally.
Yeah.
I just don't see where it seems like everyone's opposed to this. So why did it? It seems very shady, to be honest. I feel like it's 3 years later and I haven't really heard anything about it until now.
Yeah, so it got passed in 2018, the year before you arrived, probably.
And it was a vote.
Yes, and so it was, there's a little back history to this, which is that the powers that be in the legislature were pushing for an inland port really started around 2016. And somehow they got this notion that an inland port would be a great economic development tool for Utah. And so so Natalie Gotchner at the Kem Gardner Institute wrote a little paper, a little prospectus on what an inland port could look like. She mentioned in her paper, though, that there could be really serious air quality problems and that people needed to look at those before they went any further. But the powers that be, the developers who were like really excited about getting their hands on this undeveloped land, just didn't pay attention to that. And one of them, even in a public event, said, well, my son has asthma, but the economic development opportunity here is just too great. So that's the thinking of the people who want to make money off of this. And they have friends in the legislature. And so they really pushed this through quickly. The city, Salt Lake City, was racing to try and show everybody that the city could develop an inland port. And so you had these two competing things, the city going, no, we can do it. And then making a lot of bad decisions really quickly, like upzoning the land, creating a development agreement with some of the developers, doing things fast and dirty just to push back against the legislative leadership saying we're taking this. And it turns out that, the legislature took it, and it's been a battle ever since. And it's about 22% of the city, so about 16,000 acres. And there's a tiny bit of Magna. They threw in a tiny bit of Magna and a tiny bit of West Valley City, just so that you could technically say that it wasn't just Salt Lake City that they took. But with what, the big question is, I'm way over my time. We should stop.
Sorry.
But let me just say, if you're interested in this, we have a coalition, Stop the Polluting Port Coalition, at stopthepollutingport.org. And also people can email me at ditaseed@gmail.com. And, we're working to represent the city's interests as hard as we can. And we're cautiously optimistic that we're going to be able to make some progress. I think the one takeaway is that the legislative leadership understands that people don't like this project and now are really skeptical about how the money is being spent. So some of the legislative leaders they're so worried they commissioned this legislative audit. So that's a good sign.
Thanks. Oh,
sure.
Yeah, go ahead. What you're going to say.
That's it. Sorry, I blabbed.
I did have one quick question I wanted to follow up with, and it kind of comes from the headlines. This is Jason from ELPCO. And that is, based on the recent headlines, it seems as if the inland port is on a little bit of shaky ground, like with the audit, with the Jack Hedges, I guess the CEO kind of being moved aside. What is your prediction of what's going to happen? Despite them winning at the Utah Supreme Court, or at least partial victory, what do you think is going to happen with the inland port over the next 6 months to a year? Is it going to be one of those projects that the legislature touches and they think it's going to turn to gold, but it turns to lead? Or will it kind of struggle on and actually become something?
So I think the answer to that is up to us a little bit, not completely, but the next 6 months will tell the story. And it may be, I think a best case scenario is that the Utah Inland Port Authority ceases to exist, and the responsibility for everything that happens in the area falls back on the city. The city wrote a master plan in 2016 for the area, the Northwest Quadrant Master Plan. And so Salt Lake City has given a lot of thought to how the area could develop. And they use this term eco-industrial development, which sort of sounds like an oxymoron, but there are ideas about sustainable development contained in that document. So it would be great if the city got more authority. And I think we have the opportunity to make that happen between now and the end of the year, that the legislature does decide to dissolve the Utah Inland Port Authority. There was a development called USTAR. I forget what the acronym stands for, but it was a similar economic development initiative. And it sort of went through the similar cycle where it wasn't really well defined to start with, and the legislature became very skeptical about how money was being spent. They did an audit, the audit was scathing. And what ended up happening was they rolled USTAR, they decommissioned it basically, and took it sort of into the Governor's Office of Economic Development. That could happen with the Port Authority. So if this is something that you all are interested in, now is the time to engage. Between now and the end of the year, and perhaps at the next legislative session, we'll really see how this unfolds. And this is our opportunity to influence how it unfolds.
Thank you very much, Dita, for this great update right out of the headlines. And we appreciate your time and your expertise on the topic.
Thanks for inviting me.
Well, we're going to move from one controversial topic to another. When it rains, it pours at ELPCO. We're fortunate to have Judy Short, who's the land use chair at the Sugar House Community Council and actually a part of ELPCO's board as well. She's right in the middle between them, the two community councils. She's going to be talking to us about the affordable housing incentives, which is a plan Salt Lake City has been developing for years, but really is starting to come into the public view at this moment, and has had some public forums and hearings where people have been able to vent a little bit about it. Judy, you've been at those meetings. Could you come on up and tell us about it, please? X right there will be a good spot.
X marks the spot. I want you to know I live in the Emerson neighborhood, which is in Sugar House and ELPCO. So I'm kind of on the fence. Affordable housing. I think we all know that we're short of affordable housing in this town. We all know people that have been trying to find some place to live and they can't find something they can afford. Or a housing apartment building is being torn down and 13 families are displaced and there's no place for them to go. So the city is looking at many ways to try to fill in housing where there's a bare piece of land. So an example would be, I mean, right now we have, I don't know what the percentage is, but a large percent of land is single family housing. And then we have apartments, and a lot of the new apartments we all know are not affordable, probably for everybody in this room. And they, rent on a 1-bedroom in Sugar House is $1,400 a month. That's a lot of money. And if you need more than 1 bedroom because maybe you have a spouse and a family, you could pay $2,500. That's like a house payment. The prices of houses has gone sky high. So maybe that $2,500 doesn't even cover a house payment. And oh, gee, you don't have the down payment. So there's a huge demand for people for living in a place that's more affordable. And we just don't have the housing. So this plan is to take, one thing we've had the luxury of in Salt Lake, our houses have about a 10-foot, I'm guessing, setback in the older parts of town between each other. So it might be 10 feet on one lot, 4 feet on the other lot, 14. Some are closer, but a lot of them are more wide. And what this is doing is taking a single family lot as an example, reducing those setbacks so that you might have only 3 or 4 feet setback on both sides. You still have to meet the front average of the block face, but the rear can go as far back as the alley or 3 feet, or I don't know the exact numbers of setbacks, but the idea is you could get more parcels on the lot. So on my house, on my lot, you could probably get 4 single family houses. And you just take one lot, that doesn't seem like a big deal, except if everybody's house is now 6 feet away from the house next to him, and everybody's house is single story, and all of a sudden all the new ones are 2 stories. get enough space in those houses, people start to complain they're losing their privacy. And there are no simple things like there's no green space for the children to play in the yards. And we haven't built any parks into this plan. So for those of you that haven't read the plan, if you have the agenda, the link is on it, but you can just Google Salt Lake City government affordable housing incentives, and you'll come up with it. And you'll read more than you ever want to know. And one of the problems is that the incentive piece means if the city says to a developer, if you allow for 50% of the units that you build on a parcel to be affordable, 80% of AMI, then we will let you use lower cost materials. It's what you call an over-the-counter permit. You don't have to wait in line to get to the planning commission and have all that extra approval. So things would move forward faster, which cuts the developer's cost. But if you're like me and you drive down the street, you can pick out the houses that were built with the over-the-counter permit. They're just not, they fill the buildable envelope, which might be, a 5-foot setback on either side and 20 feet in the backyard and 28 feet tall. And that's what you get. But it has nothing to do with the style or the layout on the land, that sort of thing. So there's just lots of compromise that we're losing with these ideas. I asked, what about the over-the-counter permits? And I was told, well, that won't be a problem because the permit staff has now been moved under the planning department. They're going to train them. But I'm not sure that they can train them enough and fast enough to handle big, burst of projects that they anticipate. And then enforcement. I think you may know that Salt Lake doesn't do a very good job of enforcement. We have the Good Landlord Act, and people fill out a form. Landlords fill out a form. They say who their renters are, and they say this and that about the property, and they pay their fine or their fee. But that's about all. Nobody really inspects those. They're supposed to be inspected every 4 years. But I hear from some that they don't ever see an inspector. Salt Lake has a wonderful app called Mobile 311. And you can, or Salt Lake City Mobile, I think they changed the name. You can take a picture of a problem and send it in, and that goes right to enforcement. And supposedly an inspector will go out and see what the problem is and try to fix it. Well, my personal experience is that half the time it comes back, case closed. Like I wasn't arguing. I can report the chickens that are eating all the plants in my front yard because they're not in a cage or behind a fence. But when the inspector goes, they're all in the cage. And so it's not a problem. So there's just lots of pieces to this that are missing. I asked how much money have we got in the enforcement? Because the other piece is you have to write agreements so that you have to follow the paperwork, the federal paperwork, to make sure that people are making the income that they say they are to qualify for that affordable housing. And then every year that has to be validated so they remain eligible, whether they own it or they rent it. But the city hasn't hired any staff that would do that. And when I asked, they said, well, we don't know how many we need. And I said, well, you have to have some on board when you start, and then you add more as you need them. So there's just a lot of things that aren't thoroughly clarified in these. And they're going to do a combination of different things, like you could have a row house, or I would look at that, a row house is maybe 4 apartments, 4 townhomes in a row with 1 townhome facing the street. They could be condominiums. There are just lots of different variations in here. It's like anything goes, and they haven't really thought it all out. So a number of us talked to the Planning Commission, and like, for example, 80% of AMI. Do you know what that means? That means that the average minimum income in the city is, I'll make up a number, $70,000 for a family of 4. If you make $7.50 an hour and you work 40 hours a week, that's $15,000 a year. So if you have a spouse, that's $30,000. How much rent can you afford with that money? You're only supposed to spend 30% of your income on housing. That includes utilities and water and all those other, I guess, taxes, all those things. So somebody making $7.50 an hour might have $400 a month. What can you buy in this town for $400 a month? So the idea is that these units would somehow meet that goal, but the math doesn't add up. So there's just lots of problems. And fortunately, when we talked to the Planning Commission, they decided to table the plan for now and go back and look at, the 15 big items that we identified. I don't think it does any of us any good to have housing made of cheaper materials or no privacy in our backyards. Maybe we're just spoiled. I don't know.
Judy, I had a quick question. I remember there were some changes made to the plan right before it was presented to the Planning Commission in May. Didn't they relax the setback requirements and bring it back to what the R1 or R2 zoning would normally require?
I think they did, and I just don't know those numbers.
Gotcha. Okay. So originally it was going to be tighter. They were going to kind of allow bigger developments in there, but then they let that go back. Okay. Another quick follow-up question, that is, how much of the opposition to the plan do you think is generated by people who don't want to see changes to single-family zoning in Salt Lake City?
Well, I think there's a lot of that. But I'm not sure it's a compelling argument. Mm-hmm. Because to me, building substandard housing to get more isn't offsetting that argument. There's just, too many negative things. I mean, they have to look at what you need is somebody who's making 40 or 60% of AMI. That's the crowd that needs the help. And none of these I can see are ever going to make that. So, maybe we don't want the projects, but maybe we need some apartment buildings that cater to that kind of an audience that are funded by a big bolus of federal money, or I don't know, money out of the sky. Where do you get it? But we need some of that to meet that need. Just like we need another homeless shelter, but we can't seem to find the money for that.
Do you think the planning division can get to a plan that people can agree on with many of the components it's already had, or do you think it's going to be pared down quite a bit to get past the city council and the planning commission?
They want to approve it in September.
Okay.
I don't think that's doable.
And by plan, it goes to the planning commission and then it goes to the city council.
To the city council, right.
So they want to wrap it up by September. Wow, that's fast.
Yeah. And they didn't put any money for new staff in the budget. So
I asked for questions. It looks like Mike Alosi, one of our board members, has a question. Go ahead, Mike.
Hey, hey Judy. So I guess, am I muted still? Oh,
you're good.
I guess I'm just confused with, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. I'm just totally confused with this affordable housing thing because it doesn't seem like it has any meat to it. It just seems like it's like an idea, like, oh, we want to do affordable housing, but they don't have any plan. Like you said, they didn't hire any staff. That, like, we don't need more super expensive apartments. We just don't. They're already, from my understanding, it looks like a lot of those aren't filled. And so the developers, why do we approve more of what we don't need? I mean, I know, like, it seems like people who are, in our economic brackets here, who aren't the super top of the food chain, like everybody, like the way we build wealth is having a house. And if you're renting your whole life, it's hard. So, is there any encouragement to do condos? I mean, you mentioned condos. That's like a step into ownership. It's like a first entry level, and I don't see that ever.
Well, that is actually in this plan. I've just too many details for me to talk about it in 20 minutes. But the idea is that some of these houses that are added or condos can be owner occupied. And that's part of the data that the city staff would have to be monitoring to make sure that those people still fall into the income range that they qualify for it. But it also, I think in the background, there's the advantage that they're going to be building some equity that they can take to live in a different neighborhood at some point if they want, which is something that's missing. When you're just renting, it's like throwing money down the drain month after month. Does that help?
Yeah, it's just hard. I mean, I don't know what people are gonna do. I look at what you said with incomes and everything, and I've kind of been thinking about this on my own for years. It seemed like prices were too high for people to afford years ago, and now it's gone berserk the past few years.
Yeah.
I just don't see a solution, and I don't understand why there's all this pushback. I mean, this is our city, and I know everybody's like, oh, I don't want that in my backyard, but what else are we going to do? There's only so much land. You got to turn some single families into one or two or three or four units. I mean, I don't see any other way out of this.
Right. But, like some of the historic neighborhoods would be part of this. And they're worried that every third house on their block could be scraped to add 4 units. So, you can kind of see both sides. But there are lots of places, like you look in Sugar House along 7th East and 900 East, south of 27th South, there are lots of parcels that are 80 feet wide and 200 feet deep. And you could put 4 or 6 townhomes or 4 small cottage houses. They're just places in the city we can fit things in that already exist without scraping. I mean, one of the reasons there's so many homeless is because we keep taking down the affordable old apartments where they're paying $400 and $500 a month. We take them down. The mayor says, my office has a list of agencies you can call, they'll help you. But none of those agencies has anything to offer because we're out of space. If we stop taking down those old units and only approved apartments where, the land is bare, or maybe all the parking lots downtown are empty, maybe that would help. It's just this whole combination of things that's really difficult.
It's a pretty ambitious plan. would you say?
Very ambitious. I'd rather see them try a section at a time. Like, I don't know, pick a zone or pick a neighborhood. I don't know what, but get it going and do it right. And then start to expand it.
Isn't that what the city did with the ADU policy as well?
Yeah, it didn't work.
It didn't work when they started it close to transit, right? Then they expanded it, and it's
in 3 years they have 30 units.
Yeah, it's expensive. That's why.
And you know, the first one that we saw, I asked the realtor on my committee, okay, so if they were putting one of those prefab units on, and the city required a separate hookup for sewer and water, which cost $30,000, and the unit was 90. So I said, okay, if you're going to spend 120, what does the rent have to be? And she figured out it had to be at least $1,200 a month to make the mortgage payment on that loan. So one thing the city's done, I think, is cut out that required sewer line so that you could probably tap into the main line that's already on the parcel.
That's part of the revision to the ADU policy.
Right, and that'll cut some of it down. But it's still, it's hard.
Why? I have one clarifying question too. Actually, no, we got more. Sorry, let's go to the audience. Do you want to talk to Cindy or Lynn?
Oh, I'll talk to Cindy.
Okay, go ahead, Cindy. You're muted. Maybe we should talk to Lynn.
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Cindy's here. Yes.
Okay, I got it. So I think what people aren't appreciating is that the city is giving away the value of the land in these upzones without getting anything in return. So when the city upzones, say from SR3, which would have allowed townhouses, to an RMF 45, it has given away a massive density bump, and it hasn't gotten any commitment for affordability. And I don't consider 80% of AMI any kind of commitment to affordability. That is not where the need is. I'm a landlord, and a tenant who earns 80% of AMI is indistinguishable from a tenant who earns 100% of AMI. So what the city is doing is not looking at the economics. Housing for the city is completely isolated in planning and zoning. And it doesn't look at the economic issues, which Judy has addressed. It doesn't look at the role of depreciation in landlords' decision-making. It doesn't integrate the different aspects of housing into a complete package. And so you get this fragmented approach, which has resulted in huge errors over time. Let me just pick one that everyone knows about: the removal of all of the multifamily and single-family housing on Windsor Street for the expansion of the Smith Food King parking lot on 800 South, which I think everyone sees as a horrid decision. So that's just one example of the way the city has gotten rid of housing at the expense of neighborhoods and failed to deliver on additional housing for decades. So really you have to look at the land costs, and when the city engages in an upzone, it is giving developers huge benefits and it's not getting anything back. So that is the core problem. It's just this massive welfare for developers. And the city council members think that it's all fine because they're creating more units, but those units are not the ones the city needs. The units the city needs are the ones it's already lost, thousands of them. So anyway, I will defer to Lynn, who has even more information than I do. Thanks.
Thank you.
Lynn, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I think she addressed what I was going to add.
Got it. Okay.
It's horrible. I think it's horrible that our AHO, in comparison to 6 other cities that I reviewed, is the only one who suggests tearing down single-family housing to install and erect new construction that would be twice the cost. Secondly, we need more owners in Salt Lake, not more renters. A stable city is based on ownership of housing, and most people won't be able to afford this new housing. So that's my concern. Thank you.
I had a quick question, Judy. We see in single family zone neighborhoods, duplexes, basement apartments, even triplexes. How did those get there if single family zoning would normally prohibit them from being?
Old zoning, I don't know.
Okay, so it used to be allowed, but it's no
When
longer.
Salt Lake started, my house was built in 1898. We didn't have a zoning code till 1919 or 16, something like that. So different things were allowed, and every time the city rewrites the zoning code, stuff changes, and then all these places are non-conforming.
So can you tell us, as we wrap up, what are the next steps that you foresee for the affordable housing incentives? What do you think is what's the timeline or the next steps?
The city's going to get back to us with a new draft.
Okay. Gotcha. And the timeline originally was September, but you think that's probably going to be pushed back?
I think so.
Okay.
And the affordable, let's see, the accessory dwelling unit is right behind that. So that may end up going first. I don't know.
Okay. AHO or ADU, it's we'll figure it out.
That's right.
Well, thank you, Judy, for coming tonight and telling us all about it. Appreciate her expertise. I'm going to actually do like a shameless promotion as well. Right before this meeting, I turned in a draft of an article I've been writing for City Weekly about the Affordable Housing Initiative. I've basically just sent it off. I've interviewed a lot of folks that are on our call and folks engaged on the issue. So watch for it in the July 7th issue of City Weekly, assuming the editor likes it and actually wants to run it. But this will be a good overview of what has been going on and a little bit about the different arguments for and against the policy. So the July 7th issue of City Weekly. And thanks to everyone on the call who spoke to me about that as well. We next are going to go to Tim Cosgrove from Salt Lake City Mayor's office. Tim has been plugging things into the chat. We appreciate that, Tim. I think I need to make you a co-host. There you are. And wait, where are you?
You just made Lynn Pershing.
I almost did. I'm there, Tim. There you are. You're on. Are you there, Tim? I think you might be muted. Let me see what I can do here. Where are you? You might be muted, Tim. Can you unmute yourself?
Okay. It's not letting me unmute. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Oh, great. Well, thanks for having me. I just have been sharing information as we go along. So I just have actually a couple things to report on now, where the mayor's kicked off the Clean Air Challenge July 1st. So the Clean Air Challenge is a month-long initiative. We started this as a city back in 2009. And because of all the ozone that is higher during the summertime, this is a good way to reduce vehicle emissions by choosing alternative methods of transportation. I've got some links in here with how much pollutants it curtails when you just take a bike as opposed to using a car. It's kind of fun to watch that. But sign up for the kickoff and challenge yourself wherever you can, wherever it's possible. Take a carpool. I've been carpooling myself twice a week into the city county building. Take transit, telework, ride a bike. All of that will help reduce the emissions and contribute to cleaner air. You heard the fireworks restrictions from our Salt Lake City Fire Department. I put the links in there if you want additional information. For those of you wishing to still participate in celebrating our nation's Independence Day and Utah Pioneer Day, we have the Salt Lake City's first annual Laser Night Festival this summer. So July 2nd, I believe July 2nd is at Jordan Park, and July 23rd will be at Liberty Park. The laser light show will begin around sundown, around 9:30. It'll last for 20-25 minutes. Make sure you get a spot. It's open to everyone. It's family friendly. There will be, the Food Truck League has sending some of their best food trucks out to the parks. So join in that celebration, and I'll put some links in there for that. I get a lot of questions during summertime with construction. I always turn to Lynn Jacobs because he's our resident expert, but I know Lynn's not here tonight, so I put more detailed information in there about the updates with the construction projects that are going on in the city and the transportation master plan. With that, I'm free to answer any questions.
Any questions for Tim in the chat or otherwise? Got it. Okay. Tim, thanks so much for coming on. I think you mentioned lasers, and my kids are going to be really excited about that. They probably hope that they'll actually slice things in two like they do in Star Wars. So I might have to disappoint them. But that wouldn't be any better than lighting the city on fire with fireworks, I don't think. So cool. Are you all finished, Tim? I'm sorry, I'm away from my computer. Is that it? Or do you have any, were there any chat questions that came in?
I don't see any. I'm just adding the information on the laser light show and the Clean the Air challenge.
Great. Okay. Well, we'll just head into the coda for our meeting, wrap things up. I just wanted to say that since our last meeting in May, we did have the election, the primary election. I'm trying to actually get the latest results because they just updated them today. But we, of course, helped do the debate for Salt Lake Senate District 9 between Derek Kitchen and Dr. Jennifer Plum. The last time I checked on Tuesday night, I believe Derek Kitchen was up by about 103 votes. I'm still trying to load the latest results. Maybe someone in the outside in the world can tell me if that's changed, but it's still a very close race. And there's thousands of ballots still to be counted. So something we'll be following. The Senate District 9 now represents all of ELPCO in this area. Another development that happened since our last meeting was that ELPCO gave out our first neighborhood boost grant awards. We give out 2 awards in the inaugural year of our boost grants, which are micro grants to community members who've come up with exciting projects. We had 14 applicants. We chose 2 winners this year. One will be adding lighting to some sections of McClellan Trail, a favorite jogging, hiking, dog walking trail in ELPCO. The neighbors there are going to purchase and install lighting, especially in some of the darker areas there. There'll be solar lights. So we're pleased to recognize those neighbors that stepped up and came up with this project. The second one is going to be installing historic plaques in the 9th and 9th neighborhood, telling a little bit about the history of the buildings and the institutions, the stores that created, it really is the iconic part of ELPCO, the thing that people always recognize, including who came up with the term 9th and 9th, which happened back in 1971. It was the owner of Mother Earth's Things, which is a store kind of right near where Stockist is in the children's hour, if you can imagine that. It was a store that sold crocheted bikinis. So the 1970s were an interesting place. I don't know if that'll make it into the plaque, but there is a lot of history that is up and down that street that we'll be bringing out with 4 plaques initially, created by Mike Evans, who runs a great website called Cosmic Aeroplane, which really dives into the history. So we're pleased to recognize his expertise and knowledge to create something physical that we all can learn from as we head down the 9th to 9th. Are there any questions from our audience or board members or anything that we can help answer? Because we're about to go on summer vacation. We won't be back till the end of September. And we'll have 2 meetings in September and October. And those are actually going to be my last ELPCO meetings. I'm going to be stepping down as co-chair after October. So we'll be a new team taking over in January of 2023. And we'll be working on that transition over the summer and into the fall. But until then, we'll bid you adieu until I think it's September 22nd is when our next meeting will be. And thanks for showing up for ELPCO.